I'm Brian. I'm part of the leadership team here. I think I can safely say I know everybody in the room, so I don't need to do any more intros. I think, though, can't tell if everybody is on our mailing list. So if you're not, you can tap one of the little tags and join. Because if you were on the mailing list this week, you might have heard that one of the things that that's been really important for Dwell, and we've slowly been exploring, is how to have an impact in our community. And so one of the things we're trying to do is a new opportunity has appeared to work with an organization right here in San Mateo called Cora, and they do some amazing work to serve their clients who are survivors of relational abuse. And they do programs like safe housing, legal services, mental health services, crisis intervention, prevention, education. And so as we've been talking to them lately, they have some immediate needs that we could jump in and help with this summer, hopefully. Quite a few people have signed up already, but if you're interested in hearing more, we'll send out an email this week. You can sign up with that QR code. And hopefully that'll turn into more long-term opportunities for us to serve them, and they really serve a vulnerable population, and I think we can have an impact by partnering up with them. The other thing, as Dwell has grown, we have kind of been building our infrastructure little by little, hopefully kind of at the right pace for the size that we are. This summer, we've been really trying to reboot our connections team, and thanks for the people that really helped set up all the things, the snacks and name tags, and get everything ready. We really want to be a welcoming place where visitors can come and they feel like, hey, this is a safe place for me. This is a place where I can get to know people. This is a place where I can experience God's presence. And a big part of that would be, we've been pushing this every once in a while, but if everybody can sign up for 1 week this year to come early and help us set up, that would really help push forward our idea and goal of really, it takes a lot to get this place ready, and it's not perfect yet, but we try to make it a very welcoming place for new people to come and check things out, check out our community, check out our faith. So you can scan that QR code. If you can check your calendar especially this summer with a lot of traveling, we would love to have like 2 people sign up each week to come early and help the setup team. We have a regular setup team, and they can guide you through everything. There aren't any special skills needed. We won't make you even lift anything heavy. But I think that would just go a long way toward us helping to build a welcoming environment here at Dwell, which is something we really strive to do. As Lisa mentioned, we're in this series called Taste and See. And we're really trying to, we realize this came out of our community discernment times, where we sit around tables to talk about what's on our hearts and what we should talk about at Dwell Church. And we really saw this desire to, how do we embody our faith and worship God with our bodies? Because we realized that in so many ways, we've just been trained to disconnect from our bodies. Like our modern society has really emphasized the rational, the intellectual over the body and over the spirit. And even in churches over the past few decades, we've really emphasized knowing the Bible and a lot of knowledge and knowing the right doctrine, being able to articulate what we believe in. And I think that's been to the detriment of how we act, of our spirit and our body. And so we're trying to reconnect that and build a healthy theology of the body. And we're doing that through the 5 senses. Who remembers which ones we've covered already? Do people remember? There was smell with the jasmine. There's taste at the park. We had the freshly baked bread. And touch. I missed the Hug Fest last week, apparently. There was, let me say this right, there was consensual, non-sexual touching happening. Yeah, that would have been fun. And if you caught our podcast last week, I'm trying to live a more hug-positive lifestyle, and so I missed that. But today we're talking about hearing. All right, so let me start by going back to when I was in high school. One of my primary identities was as a band geek. All right, so I played trumpet all through high school. I grew up in Arizona. We actually had one of the better marching bands in the state. How many of you are familiar with drum corps? Anybody? Okay, so drum corps are like elevated marching bands. They actually go around the country and compete, and they're judged on their formations and their precision and their music. And a couple of my friends joined the drum corps one summer, the Casper Troopers. They're based in Wyoming. But they toured with them for the summer, and I went down to see them at a competition in the LA area. And they didn't win, but the Concord Blue Devils won. Some of you might know them. They're based here in the Bay Area in Concord. But at the end of the show, my cousins and I, who went to the show, we went down to the field as a junior college football stadium, and we stood on the track, and they came out for an encore, and so they lined up along the sideline. And so a drum corps, unlike a marching bands have woodwind instruments like flutes and clarinets and things, but drum corps, drum and bugle corps, they call them, are all brass instruments. And so when they did their encore with like the drums pounding and every brass instrument just blaring, it was like this visceral sound, wall of sound that just like went through my body. I pulled this image from the internet, just if you've never pictured it before. It was not loud like it hurt your ears, but it was just powerful and full of energy. And it was just this experience of how sound, just obviously 40 years later, I still remember vividly how much it affected me just to be there in front of this high energy sound wave that was coming at me. And all that to say, hearing and the things that we hear really can impact us in a lot of ways, for good and for bad. So we're going to talk about hearing on two different levels. We're going to talk about the auditory part, actually our ears pick up the sound waves and how we hear things. But also on a more, what we'll call a sacramental level, there's hearing with our hearts. And especially in Christian circles, we often talk about how do we discern the voice of God, which we were talking about in the stillness time. Maybe the inner promptings of the Holy Spirit. How do we listen to God with our hearts? That may be audible, it may not be. I have a favorite verse that is from Isaiah, who says, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. And I always have this desire that I'll hear that voice and it'll be like a divine GPS and say, turn left at the Taco Bell or something. But whether this is audible or not, in this verse, we don't actually know, right? He may have heard it in his heart. He may have heard it in his ears. But let me start with just the concept that what we hear is important to us. And it's important to us in a bunch of different ways. So for the ancient Israelites, there's this verse in Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This was like a rallying cry for the ancient Israelites that reminded them that their God that they worshiped is the God Yahweh. And they actually call this whole phrase, the Shema. Shema is the word in Hebrew that is translated as hear. And so the ancient Israelites, and even to modern Jews today, they say the Shema as a reminder of who they are. And their identity is based in what they say and what they hear. This is not only a reminder of who God is, but for the Israelites, is a reminder of who they were. So in Exodus 19:5, if you listen obediently to what I say, God, and keep my covenant, out of all the peoples, you'll be my special treasure. So the identity of the Israelites was bound up in who God was and who they are. I think this echoes another verse that many of us may have heard. God says, I will be your God and you'll be my people. And that's just a core part of the Israelites' identity. That's a core part of who we are as followers of Jesus today in the church, that we are God's people, that we are his special treasure. And so the things we hear from God are crucial in forming our identity and how we navigate this world. I think when I became a parent, I became much more conscious of the words I speak and how they could actually impact our kids. And I think a lot of people realize we can say a lot of things that have unintentional negative impact the way we talk to our kids, right? And there's things we want to instill in our kids and let them know who they are by the things we say. So it really impact our identity. And so if we have an underdeveloped sense of hearing, that reduces our ability to dwell in Jesus' presence. So let me explain that a little bit. If we are made to be in a relationship with Jesus, we need to be, as we say here at Dwell Church, the center of the target for human life is to be in a conversational relationship with Jesus. We have to be able to hear him and be in conversation with him to go deeper into that relationship and to experience his presence. So if we're not hearing him, we can't really be in that conversation, right? That's the gist of the message. So I'll come back to that. I could probably stop now, but that's kind of that's the big takeaway. If we can't listen to Jesus, whether it's through our ears or through our heart, then we are going to not experience the goodness that he has in store for us. So first we're going to talk about the actual sense of hearing, the auditory part of hearing, okay? Once in a while you'll see me back at the soundboard playing audio engineer. And here's a concept that's important for audio engineers. Clear auditory input prevents the brain from overexerting itself to decode sounds, thus preserving mental energy. So what that means is our brains have finite resources, right? And so Jerry's back at the soundboard today doing a great job of making sure, yay Jerry. He's making sure that my voice isn't too soft, so you don't have to strain to listen to me, because then you'd have to use more of your brain energy. He's making sure that it's clear and there's not static or dropouts. Because if you have all that, then you'll have fewer brain resources to process what I'm saying and to remember what I'm saying. Now, whether you want to remember what I'm saying or not, that's a whole different story. But if you'll just nerd out with me for a minute, audio engineers also talk a lot about frequencies. So if you have a home audio system or a car stereo system, you look at the specs. Often it says rated from 20 hertz, which is really low, to 20,000 hertz, which is really high. And that's kind of the range that humans can hear, although not many people can hear 20,000 hertz, and very few people can hear 20 hertz, although you might be able to feel some of the 20 hertz in the low frequencies. So I'll just go through this really quick, but I think it's kind of interesting. Maybe it's not. The human voice goes through these two, goes from a range of about here. Jerry's the keyboard on. We had talked about this earlier. It was about 85 hertz to, I didn't have this memorized. From about 85 hertz to 255. So down here to about here. It's hard to hear a tone on a keyboard and translate it to voice, but maybe just for the sake of illustration, typical men speak at about this frequency. The average woman speaks at about this frequency. All right, so that's not really important right now, but for the sake of the illustration, as I was preparing for this sermon, I found out there's all these frequencies that people have identified that have a particular impact on your body and on your brain. Okay, and so I was discovering frequencies like 528 hertz and 963 hertz and 777 hertz. They're all frequencies that people have identified that have a certain impact on us. So there's not a lot of, I couldn't find a lot of scientific research on it, but in the realm of people who lead meditation and mindfulness, they use these frequencies for a lot of things. And a lot of them have names like the golden frequency or stuff like that. So I have this here, little singing bowl. It chimes at about 741 hertz. And somebody named that frequency the solfeggio frequency. And I'm going to try to circle it, but I'm not good at this, so try not to judge me for it, but this is kind of how it rings. That's about 741 hertz. And it's supposed to help you have more mental clarity, reduce anxiety, and relieve you of stress. If you didn't feel that just now, that's okay. It was more for demonstration purposes. To be honest, I bought the cheapest singing bowl that I could find. If you had a whole set and you had like the lights and smells, and you might be able to experience more of that. Matt actually told me about this. Grace Cathedral in San Francisco has these things called sound baths. And so I'd be interested if anybody wants to go check one out. If it's like an hour-long immersive experience with the different frequencies, and there's artists that lead them. But we couldn't bring in one of those today. But that's just an example of, I think, how we can have the effect of different sound affecting our bodies. I have another example, but I think I'm gonna skip that now just to keep things tight. Has anybody heard of bilateral stimulation? Okay, a couple of people. So maybe we'll talk about this on the podcast tomorrow. So if you're interested in it, I'll go a little deeper into it. But it's just another example of how the things we hear and the way we listen to them can affect. It's like the audio part of bilateral stimulation is like listening to an audio track that goes back and forth and engages both sides of your brain. Okay, so, but I want to jump more back into what the Bible says about hearing. So we'll come back to one other interesting research study, I think, that's relevant. The word Shema looks like this in Hebrew. And what does the word Shema translate to in English? Hear. Okay. Anybody know or want to guess, if we open up our Bibles, what's the first instance that we come across the word Shema? Any ideas? Yeah, see, I thought that was pretty interesting. Lisa. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, after the whole apple incident, they hear God walking in the garden. And what happens? They're ashamed because of what they did. So that's interesting. The first time you hear the word hear in the Bible, it leads to Adam and Eve being ashamed, and it's actually drawing them away from God. However, that's not the rule throughout the Bible. That what we hear can also draw us towards God. So um, when you see the use of the word Shema, it doesn't just say hear like go in one ear and out the other. It means listen to it, take it in, and act on it somehow. It implies the requirement of acting on it. And so in Deuteronomy 6:3, oh, this is the walking in the garden. In Deuteronomy 6:3, it says, Israel, you shall listen and be careful to do them. These are God's commandments, so that it may go well for you and that you may increase greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. So that's the example of when we hear properly, things will go well with us. It'll draw us closer to God versus moving us away from God. And kind of on the other end, we're warned about the false prophets in Deuteronomy 13. Don't listen to them. Don't do anything that they tell you to do, because that can lead you away from God. And if you want to stay close to God, you listen to what God says, not what the false prophets say. And so this is an important thing here. Whenever we look at these listening and hearing commands in the Bible, they're not just commands that come out of the blue. They're not just a random person speaking on your Instagram feed that you don't know. They're not just words on a digital billboard for whoever drives by. These words are spoken in relationship. This is the God, Yahweh, speaking to his covenant people who he is committed to. And when I say covenant relationship, he's committed to their fruitfulness, their flourishing. Even if they fail on their end, he's not going to back out. It's not like a contract where if you do this, I'll do this, and if you don't do this, then I'm out of here. God has a commitment to his people, his treasure, his chosen people. And when God speaks, he wants them to listen for their own good. Okay, so there's one other Hebrew word that is often translated here. This is what it looks like, azan. And this is often translated, give ear to or listen to me. Hearken, if you speak Old English. And so you'll see it in the Psalms. The psalmists often cry out, hear me, God. How long will it be before you hear my prayer? Right? And then it's also used as warning. So the prophet Jeremiah says, listen, I'm going to bring a disaster on this place. And so Jeremiah is using the word saying, listen to this or else. This is a warning. Or else this will not be for your good if you don't listen. The next one is also from the Psalms. Give ear to my words, hear my prayer. Listen, hearken to me. And again, this is the vocabulary of a covenant relationship. And it's not just any relationship where people commit to each other. This is a relationship, like as I said, God is committed to the flourishing of his people, that they are his special treasure. And he wants us to live according to his good plans for us. And they're not just random commandments. Even Jesus, when you look at a lot of his parables and teachings, they're preceded or followed by, whoever has ears, let them hear. Right? And he's not just saying, listen to this. He's saying, this is for your good. I'm teaching you this because I'm here for your flourishing. I want you to experience my spaciousness, the abundant life that I created you for. Okay? So one more bit of research that I think is interesting before we wrap this up. There's Matt told me also there's all this research on group singing. So this is called neurocognitive and emotional benefits of choir singing and their mediating factors across adulthood. Catchy phrase. Because we don't sing much in groups. I mean, we just did here, right? When else do we do it? Like the national anthem, we're at a sporting event. Choirs. So, and this one is specifically about choirs, which will explain a little bit of the results. But the study came up with a few things. It releases neurotransmitters like oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, which help us to feel good. It lowers our cortisol, which is the stress hormone, so it relieves stress when we sing together. It increases the neuroplasticity, like rewiring our brain with new neural connections when both halves are being engaged. For the people in the choirs, they begin to align their brain activity and their heartbeats. I don't know if you'd want to align your brain activity with mine, but you can do that. Sometimes happens in choirs. And then for people who are learning words and parts, it increases their cognitive engagement. They actually saw that they increased in verbal fluency and episodic memory. So some of the results, they found that the group singing thing was very calming and regulating for people, especially people who are struggling with dementia, people with ADHD. It showed a reduction in depression. Even for people on the autism spectrum, it helped them to communicate better. And they found that it modulates pain perception. So watch for signups for the dual choir. I didn't clear this with Licia, but I'm sure she can get some nice rainbow-colored choir robes, right? Um, and then on the flip side, a lot of you will know or understand that if you have hearing loss, it can be really detrimental because we begin to isolate. And it can lead to depression because when you, kind of like I said earlier, when you have to use so many brain resources to decode what someone's saying, you have very few brain resources left to process it, to remember it, to come up with a response, to be in conversation. And so people disengage socially and become isolated and lonely. So there's a verse in 1 Corinthians 13 that says, we see through a glass dimly. I think that applies to hearing as well. It's like we have too much earwax in our ears. We just can't hear clearly. The auditory part of us, I mean, we have so much noise around us that we just have to filter through. We have leaf blowers, we have airplanes, and that's why these are wonderful. Noise cancellation headphones. When I first got, one of my friends, I'd never used one before until I went on an international trip. My friend Eric said, you should try my noise cancellation headphones. So I borrowed them, and I had no idea how loud an airplane is when you're not wearing headphones, and how after hours on an airplane, it's just fatiguing to your body, to your mind. And these are amazing. To cancel out the frequencies you don't want to hear, and so you can focus on the frequencies you do want to hear. It's a really important concept. And then on the sacramental level, we have so many voices that are impacting our hearts. We have maybe family that says this is who you should be or this is who you are. We have society saying in order to be successful, you have to be like this or you should have this. We have marketing gurus saying in order to be happy, you have to have this item or this item. And all these voices are just bombarding us. And how do we filter out the frequencies that we don't want to listen to, the frequencies that are drawing us away from God? And how do we filter so we can hear the frequencies where God is actually speaking to us? Because, like I said earlier, the center of the target for our human relationships and flourishing is a conversational relationship with Jesus. So let me wrap up by saying that prayer is conversation, all right? And conversation is relationship. And when you're in a conversation, there's both the hearing and there's speaking. We've probably been in conversations where there's one way and one person was speaking, right? That's awkward and no one really enjoys that. But in our conversation with Jesus, we need to keep hearing who we are. Colossians 3:12 says, we are God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. We need to keep hearing, I'm a beloved child of God. We sang about that earlier. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. We need to keep hearing that from God. If we have other voices crying that out, we begin to forget so easily. And we begin to think we're something else. We find our identity in other things. And then we need to be able to speak. We can unleash everything upon God. If we read the Psalms, all the emotions are unleashed upon God. We can share our doubts with God. We can share our sadness. We can share our joys. We can share our frustrations. We can share our anger. One of the storytellers at our last story night, 15 years of being angry with God. God can take that. But the important thing is whether these conversations are hard or easy, we need to keep at it. Keep coming to God in conversation. God will hear us. In Jeremiah 29, he says, you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. God in his covenant relationship with us for our good will hear us if we just keep coming to him. We just keep coming to him. And one of the ways we do that, we were at a restaurant last weekend, a Loud restaurant. So we had a big party, and there were other big parties there celebrating, and it was really hard to hear, and my voice got tired just trying to talk to the person in front of me. But I realized I had to be really intentional just to look at the person I was talking to talk to them and to hear what they're saying. And I think that's just a good analogy of if we want to have conversations with Jesus, we have to be looking at him, fix our gaze on him, and allow him to speak to us. And then he will want to hear what's on our hearts in conversation back and forth, two ways. And so the stillness time is one, I think it's a great example. It might be hard to see the fruitfulness of 2 minutes here in this group. But if that's a practice that we can each take into our daily routine somehow, whether that's 1 minute during lunchtime or 5 minutes before you go to bed, taking the time to still our hearts, to noise cancel all the other things that are bombarding us, and just focus in and converse with Jesus. Listen to what he has to say to us, that we're his beloved, that we're his special treasure, and then offer to him the things that are on our hearts. we'll just go deeper into this conversational relationship that God created us for. Because the senses we have, the 5 senses we're talking about, they're a gift to us. And they allow us to dwell deeper in God's presence. So that we can, as we begin to hear more clearly, we can just have that conversational relationship with Jesus, to be what God wants to be, so that we can live the life God intended for us to flourish and to experience the goodness and spaciousness that he wants for us. So let's pray. God, thank you for speaking to us, that you desire to have a relationship with us. And God, there's so many things that get in the way of us hearing you. And I pray that we can quiet all the other voices and focus in on your voice, to fix our eyes upon you, to gaze upon you, to receive your belovedness upon us, and to experience more of all that you have to give us, your spaciousness and your love and your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.